In today's episode of Today in World War II, April 21st, the very first American casualty of World War II takes place. Greece surrenders. Butch O'Hare is awarded the Medal of Honor and eventually would be dishonored by the city of Chicago. Joseph Stalin officially creates the very infamous Directorate of the KGB, Death to Spies. Charles de Gaulle does a major solid for French women. Soviet troops, infantry reach Berlin, and the RAF conducts its last raid on Berlin of the war. Let's get started. Okay, so getting back to my fascination and my forlorn dream that someday I will be able to create a Trivia Pursuit game just for World War II. And if so, this will be a question, and probably only I and people who watch these videos will understand. Today was the first American military casualty happened in World War II. It happened in Norway. American Air Attaché, U.S. Army Captain Robert Losey was killed observing a German bombing on the railway junction in Norway. And it's interesting that all the theaters in World War II, this was where the first American casualty was, and we weren't even in the war yet, right? I would have guessed, frankly, before I didn't know about this myself, but I would have guessed it would have been one of the sailors on the two destroyers that the German U-boats had attacked before in 41 before the U.S. came into the war. But actually, it was an air attaché in Norway. On April 21st, 1941, Greece surrendered their entire army to Germany. Uh, so my only comment is probably wasn't a good idea to send all those troops and equipment to Greece when there was no way you were going to be able to withstand the full onslaught of the Wehrmacht. It was a symbolic gesture. I get it. Churchill didn't want to leave the Greeks without any support, but it was an expensive gesture. Let's just put it that way. On April 21st, 1942, Butch O'Hare, the American carrier fighter pilot who had shot down five uh, Japanese planes as they were trying to attack his carrier, the USS Lexington, in the South Pacific, he was awarded the Medal of Honor. He was the first naval recipient of the Medal of Honor. Years later, the city of Chicago, unfortunately, give dishonored his memory and dishonored his uh, his legacy and his bravery by naming him after their airport. And I don't know. I've been in a lot of airports in the U.S. O'Hare has to be one of the worst. It's like going to the Bermuda Triangle. It is because of all the delays and so on and so forth. Maybe it's gotten better. Maybe I'm a little bit prejudiced against Chicago because I'm a Cardinals fan and and it's home of the Cubs. Maybe. Not saying there's not a connection. Maybe. In April 21st, 1943, Joseph Stalin signed the order to create the Death to Spies counterintelligence unit called Smert And I learned about this first from a James Bond movie. I'm not sure which one it was. I think it was one of the bad ones where after Roger Moore left and there was Timothy Dalton. I think he did a couple of them. This wasn't a bad movie. Uh, I forget the name of it, but I really liked the Miriam Dabo was the Bond girl, and poof, she was smoking. Uh, I'm 61 years old. April 21st, 1944. Charles de Gaulle. Who knew that Charles de Gaulle was a suffragette? But as leader of the French provisional government in Algiers, he issued a decree that gave all French women the right to vote. Makes you wonder what took them so long, but then Americans are hardly the ones to throw stones like that because look how long and how hard fought of a battle it was for American women to get the right to vote. And I'm sure right now we're seeing a growing sentiment in certain political circles with red hats who are talking about maybe we made a mistake giving women the right to vote. Maybe it should be the man who votes on behalf of the household. So good for Charles de Gaulle, good for the French. On April 21st, 1945, Soviet infantry reached Berlin, Germany. We know what's going on here. They're coming from all sides. All these pincer movements are now reaching Berlin, the climax of the war. And, in World War II nerdy circles, there's a lot of grumbling on our side about how we weren't allowed the chance to take Berlin. But my comment is always look at how many casualties they took at the very end of the war. They took over 100,000 casualties, I believe, if not more. So I hate to say it, but we wouldn't want our boys to have suffered those kind of casualties. And plus, it was kind of like they deserved it because they had so many of their citizens killed, raped, murdered, the whole nine yards and they did the bulk of the fighting, let's face it, okay? So they deserved it and they wanted it and they got it. And on April 21st, 1945, to put the bow on Berlin here on today, the RAF attacked Berlin, Germany for the last time. I wonder how that went because you already had the Red Army entering the suburbs. So I hope hopefully the RAF Pathfinders were were accurate enough to where none of those bombs fell on the Soviet troops there. But that was it. That was the last bomber raid for RAF Bomber Command in Berlin. And I wonder if Bomber Harris in his wherever he was located in England. I'm sure it was rainy that day because it was like England in the spring. I wonder if he drank a cup of tea and looked out, the window and looked at the moon and started thinking, all by myself. Sorry for that bad song. And sorry, Richard Marx, for butchering your song. Anyway, that's it for today. I'll see you tomorrow.